Welcome back, and we've got more breaking news right now. We just got word from the White House that the president has signed the bill officially ending the historic 75-day-long partial government shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. And also, just moments ago, the House passed a 45-day clean extension of the FISA Section 702, sending it to the president for his signature before the program expires. Tonight, joining me now is our panel, NBC News national political reporter Ben Camisar, Dan Merica, co-anchor of the Early Brief newsletter at The Washington Post, Taryn Rosenkranz, Democratic strategist and CEO of New Blue Interactive, and Republican strategist Malik Abdul. Thanks to all of you for being here. Ben, I have to start with you. Let's start off by talking about the decision by Janet Mills to drop out. Was this a surprise? She was obviously down in the polls, but she is the sitting governor.
It's one thing to be down. It's another thing to decide to end your campaign before you face the voters, right? I think in her statement, she made it very clear that one big reason she decided to do this was money. And certainly when you're coming from behind and you're as down as far as she was, having the resources to crawl back that far is very difficult. I mean, we did this focus group a couple weeks ago on this show, and we asked 7 Maine voters. Every single voter we didn't know how they would vote, and all of them chose Plattner. It was a very tough hole for her to dig out, and it seems like eventually the math just became clear to her.
Well, it's a fascinating development, Dan. The DSCC has been backing Mills, as has other Democratic leaders. Today, they released this statement, now supporting Plattner, no surprise, but writing, "Our North Star is winning a Democratic Senate majority. And over the past year, Senate Democrats have carved out multiple paths to do that." How is this playing out in the Democratic Party?
I bet if you give Janet Mills a little bit of truth serum, she would have loved a statement like that, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago from the DSCC and Chuck Schumer.
Good point.
She ran out of money, but she had some pretty powerful backers who, the DSCC, Chuck Schumer, Emily's List among them, who could have poured money into this race and could have taken on Plattner if they wanted to. They clearly did not. They saw the writing on the wall as well. The Plattner had a sizable lead, and Mills herself went negative on Plattner in ads, and it really didn't work, didn't really move the needle. What I'm looking for now is, how does Maine come together? Because there is a desire to beat Susan Collins among Maine Democrats. There are a lot of unhappy, I will say, nice word, Mills voters who look at the way this played out, who look at the way that Chuck Schumer recruited her into the race, some say begged her to get into the race, and then really didn't get into the race himself, didn't spend money to support her, didn't spend money to take on Plattner. And I think there's a lot of anger in that Mills base. While it's not as big as the Plattner base, he will need everyone to take on Susan Collins, who has defeated anyone who has come at her in a Senate race. And so that will be a very significant step going forward, is how does Graham Plattner bring those Mills people back into the fold, even those who are really not happy with him?
Well, it's a fascinating question. And Taryn, let's pick up on this idea of how Plattner unifies Democrats at this point. As Dan is saying, there are plenty of Mills supporters who are not happy today about these developments. And he comes with his own set of baggage, his own set of controversies. And yet he was leading in the polls in the primaries. But how does this play in a general election against Susan Collins?
Well, I think one thing we can't forget is that we have not been able to beat Susan Collins. She is the great white whale. And so they did need to take a different approach. So I do kind of look at this a little bit as, like, maybe we do something totally different. The establishment has been unable to every time they've picked somebody that's going to be the one to beat her. And it's sort of like they were very similar and maybe too similar, and that's not going to get the energy and excitement. And so maybe this is how we do actually beat her. And I think there's going to be a unifying need for that Democratic Senate that might be able to help put that over the top.
Really pick up on that point. How do Republicans see it? Is this a real threat to Susan Collins?
You see me smiling because Republicans are happy. There were some concerns about Mills because she was more of a centrist Democrat. So there was some actual concerns about her. But now with this guy, I mean, we're going to run the table against this guy. But there is some concerns, really not even just with Maine, with senators overall. We really didn't think that this was a seat that was going to go to Democrats. But you are looking in places where Donald Trump is backing other candidates in the Louisiana race, but also hasn't endorsed yet in the Texas race, and Republicans are actually concerned about that and the amount of resources at this point that they're having to pour in a place like Texas. And I said it wrong last time I was on here, and I wanted to say it right this time around. It was Beto O'Rourke lost to Ted Cruz by 2.6 or 2.7 percentage points last time around. We don't know how Tallarico is going to perform.
Yeah, there's a big question mark about that, just how Susan Collins is Democrats' white whale. Texas has been Democrats' white whale. Dan, let's talk about the story that you broke, that Louisiana is now going to delay its primary in the wake of the Supreme Court decision, basically gutting yet another part of the Voting Rights Act, depending on how you see it. How do you see this playing out? What's the significance?
I mean, it's a hugely significant moment. I got word last night that Governor Landry, the Republican, had been calling select people who are running for House in Louisiana to inform them that he was planning on suspending the primary. Now, why is this significant? There have been ballots sent out in this primary. They have gone out to absentee voters. There are ostensibly people who have returned those ballots and voted in a primary that is now delayed. So the governor announced today officially, after we broke that news, that he was suspending or delaying the primary for House districts, for House seats. There are going to be people who are running in the primary later in May, and that includes a very contentious, interesting primary in Louisiana and other ballot initiatives, other issues. I think there are a lot of Republicans who are perplexed as to what this will mean for turnout in both races. I mean, if you're running in one of those races, how do you model who's going to turn out for a race that now people think has been suspended?
Yeah.
I mean, put yourself in the mind of the voters. That's really tough. But I do think it shows that the raw kind of redistricting power that President Trump has pushed and Democrats have responded with, it's kind of the name of the game right now. Whatever advantage either party can try and pull, they are going to do, and that's what we saw last night with this decision.
Well, I think that's a critical point, Ben. I mean, the bottom line is this tit for tat over redistricting.
Yeah.
It seems like it's only going to intensify, that this battle is not going anywhere. There are other states that are eyeing the possibility of redistricting in the wake of this Supreme Court decision. What states are you watching
Yeah, I mean, put aside the decision for 1 second. Florida passed its maps this week, unrelated. I mean, somewhat related, but largely unrelated. So that's potentially a 4-seat swing, depending on how the performance goes there. And then the question is, what can get done this cycle? There are complicating factors. Obviously, in Louisiana, like Dan was bringing up, it's harder to do when voting is actually happening, but it's easier to do when the Supreme Court directly rules on your state, right? So what happens in a state like Georgia, where you're already seeing votes starting to get cast? Will the Republican push be successful there? I don't know. But sort of looking broader out, this may have a slight shift in 26. This is going to open the floodgates of redistricting in 2028. And I think a lot of the people who looked the voters in the eye and said, we need to do this on both sides. We need to do this one time, this one emergency time, and we'll never do it again. They're going to be making the same argument in a year and a half.
Well, Malik, the president, Republicans celebrating this as a big victory, but to Ben's point, it's very unclear how it's going to play out overall. And again, what we'll really see is a lot of redistricting in 2028. It might be limited for the remainder of 2026.
And some of these states' constitutions do have limitations on what it is that they can actually do. Yeah. This is one of the things, and I'll be the Republican to say it, that we kind of started this. I think most people are against political gerrymandering to the extent that they've done it. What I'm hoping to see after this, and I can't remember the politician who actually pushed for it, it'll never happen, but there needs to be a national ban on these type of political gerrymandering. And in this case, we're doing mid-decade gerrymandering. It's not even the decade sort of thing that we normally do. Not a way that we should be handling business, for sure.
Taryn, Hakeem Jeffries was doing a victory lap after Virginia, after Democrats were successful in their redistricting effort in Virginia. Now, of course, as Ben just noted, Florida, Republicans are trying to pick up a few more seats. How are Democrats responding to the Supreme Court's decision, and do they see this as a blow?
I think there is a lot of trepidation and I think a lot of nervousness. I think there is overall, though, because these maps have been so in flux this entire time, it does not make it easy if you're a candidate trying to run. Not just in Louisiana where they postponed it and it's been like more blatant. I mean, some of these people are like, I don't know who I'm running against. I don't know where I'm running. I don't know who I'm talking to. And we're kind of late in the game towards November to be in that precarious position still.
Ben, final question to you. Where is the math right now on the redistricting tit for tat? It's still uncertain to some extent.
It's still uncertain. It's I mean, it depends on how well these candidates can do in some of the districts that are targeted. Republicans probably have a slight edge, but, you know, we're going to have to see over the coming weeks.
We are going to have to see. We will track it closely. Great conversation. Great, robust panel. Ben, Dan,
I love that word.
Taryn, Malik. Really appreciate it.